Hey everybody, it's Mark Masters. Always Bookin Comedy. It's another Monday night. We got Ray Harrington with us, joining us, I presume, from Rhode Island. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. It is Rhode Island.
Okay,
I
we're in
just had
Rhode
to look
Island. He's got
around.
terrific sound.
Yep.
Sounds amazing. Ray, we've worked together. He came out and did one of my runs in Colorado. Incredible comedian, crushed at every venue.
Oh,
Has been on
thanks. It was so much
Conan.
fun.
Very exciting. And I think mostly what we might talk about today is your very successful podcast, Funbearables,
Okay.
which has also turned into live shows some. And I'll just point out my voice is a little raspy. I did get to bed last night at 3 in the morning and was up driving around 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
I just got back from a 5-night tour in Nebraska and Iowa, and very excited to say I did not lose money on the tour. Which is you
Always the
know
goal.
not the best thing, but also it's okay to have sensible goals and to meet them sometimes. And I had a really good time. Shout out to a show producer, Drake, in Sioux City, Iowa. Incredible room. Had a ton of fun there. And
Oh, see, if you're gonna do Sioux City, you gotta try the other booker that's out there. They don't get along. Kendrick Lamar.
yeah, yes.
I had
So
to. I
we
had
we
to do
were in
it.
a basement. It was a lot of fun. Did a show in an old church. Did a show in a 300-person theater. Would have liked for more people to be at the 300-person theater, but also did a show in a very small punk bar and had we could call it meager attendance, but the best audience. They were so fun. So a really
That's
good
great.
time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nebraska, for everything. Ray, let's talk about Funbearable. So, how many episodes in are you? How long? I don't
Oh
know. How
man.
did it start?
I think we're at like 120 or 125 episodes, like official ones. We also have bonus ones that we don't count as like the regular feed because we are. I think our biggest flaw is we're bad at just saying at an hour like this is an episode, we're done, and often our episodes can turn from if we do 1 hour it's remarkable because we're
Somebody has a
doing
flight to catch.
yeah, we're doing like 2 hour long episodes, things like that. Our most recent episode from this past week was with a friend of ours, and we did a regular episode that was just over an hour, and then 2 days later we put out at night a part two to that episode, the rest of that conversation, which was Funbearable After Dark, because things took a turn towards a more R-rated conversation. But that's what we're gluttons for this idea. And then it's funny because we talk about like, yeah, we should really bank some episodes and make sure we have stuff in case something happens, or if I'm traveling for shows, or one of my co-hosts is traveling for work. And but then we get together, and instead of hey, we really knocked out like 4 episodes in 4 hours, we're like, well, we did 2 episodes in 4 hours. But
How, how do you lock down, distribute the bonus episodes?
so the bonus episodes, like we don't have a Patreon or anything like that. It would, I guess the bonus stuff would be behind a paywall in that regard.
Okay.
But everything is free on our feed. Like we have
Oh, so the
everything.
bonus episodes are freely available as well.
Yeah, usually it's something that doesn't, maybe it's an old episode. To step
So
back a
you're
little bit,
bad at making money, is what you're saying.
so bad at it. Do you need some? I'll give you some right now. That's how bad I am at it. No, so the podcast Funbearable came about because I was doing a podcast on my own called Ray Harrington Must Content, and I was doing interview stuff with people that made things I like, which was great. Like I got to talk to Bob Gale, the writer and one of the producers of Back to the Future, which was crazy. It
Cool.
was crazy. It was so cool. I was trading on like a little bit of name recognition, to just be like, "Hey, I'm a comedian. I was on Conan. You want to come talk to me?" And it was baffling how many people were like, "Yeah, okay." Um, so yeah, I was doing that, and I got frustrated because I missed having the weekly conversation, the flow that happens when you have the same people you're talking to every week on a podcast, right? And being able to do goofs and play around and do have jokes and stuff like that. I was kind of complaining about that to a friend of mine, Chuck Staten, who had a podcast with his friend Brad Rohr, and they were the Chuck and Brad podcast, and they had a pretty decent following, and we started chatting about wanting to grow and do something else, and it just sort of happened like they were on my podcast, I was on theirs all the time, and then it dawned on us like we should probably put this together and just make this a thing, and that's where Funbearable came from. So it's really exciting to be able to have those goofs, have the long running jokes of, Brad being obsessed with hot dogs because the poor guy ate one hot dog one time and now we won't let it go. It's stuff like that, ribbing your friends kind of stuff, but also talking to makers and creators of things that are fun to enjoy. And it's a fun kind of combination there. So I really do appreciate it. But yeah, so the bonus episodes, that was the long story. A lot of times, maybe there's an episode from Ray Harrington Must Content that fits what we've been talking about or what's been going on, or there's an old Chuck and Brad podcast where they interviewed somebody, and we'll include those as bonuses and stuff like that. And then there's other little things that we'll do. It's a full video podcast, so it's a lot of production. So sometimes the bonuses are just audio.
Okay. Where do you ever tape them remotely, or are they always in person?
We've only done 2 episodes, I think, that were over Zoom. Only
Okay.
2. And we really, really, really try so hard to make our schedules line up, which is so hard.
Yeah.
In the trio, it kind of breaks down. I'm the stand-up comic, Brad is the improv comic, and Chuck is kind of an amuse-bouche of comedy, but he was in a punk band, and he does a lot of production for other podcasts. Like he produces Tuesdays with Stories, the Mark Norman and Joe List podcast.
Okay.
Tell 'em Steve Dave, that's kind of in the film world.
Hold on, pause for a second.
Yeah.
Does he do that in New York City?
Yes.
And you guys are in Rhode Island.
Yes.
So he commutes one way or the other.
Yeah, so he has a place here in Rhode Island, and he also has a place in New York.
Okay. So he's good at making money.
He's good at it for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it
He
infuriates
should give
me.
you some.
Oh, it infuriates me all the time. Are you kidding me? Because he's also, he's a guy with, he doesn't have a child. He doesn't have any of that stuff going on. He's doing great. He has all the flexible money. But no, it's really fun. So he kind of goes in between, and we'll go down to New York to do episodes and have guests on and stuff like that. And then thankfully we have a studio in the basement of the Rhode Island Comedy Connection, the comedy club here in Rhode Island.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and they're so welcoming, and it's my home club, so it means a lot to be able to go in there and do these episodes. It's a lot of fun. It's a good podcast. I recommend it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Circling back to money, so you're not doing Patreon. Have you talked about possibly adding a Patreon?
Yeah, it's tricky because I don't begrudge anybody doing it. I think it's totally fine. If you want to, obviously you're putting work and time into something. There are days where I will look at the podcast and be like, what am I doing? I'm driving down to New Jersey for 3 days, and we're going to do all these podcasts. And I think about it, and I'm the working comic of the three of us that is kind of like, hey, I got to go out and make my living. I pay my bills this way.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a little tricky, but yeah, I don't think it's bad that anybody does a Patreon. For myself, I fight that idea.
Okay.
I'm terrible with that. I feel like if I'm doing a Patreon and someone is paying, I want to make sure I give them the most that I can give them.
Yeah.
And,
sure.
Right now with what we do, because it's the three of us kind of taking on the workload, it's hard for me to say, yeah, we can do that. So
Sure.
I want to skip that little middle point where you're overwhelmed with the work and trying to get it done, and then finally, enough money's coming in to hire people. We have some great people that do work on the podcast that help us out. Craig is our editor most of the time. He's fantastic, but it's tricky. I mean, we're in that world, right? We're in that universe of make everything you possibly can, make it for free, do it 25 out of the 24 hours in the day. And then one day, one thing will explode, I guess, and then you're all set. It's very amorphous. It's strange. We're in the best and worst time.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask another question, but there's
Sure.
some people watching live online, and I just want to
Oh, okay.
remind folks that you can ask questions if you type them into the chat, and I will relay them, and we can talk about them. You can be
Yeah,
part of this
deeply personal, like
interactive
puberty,
experience.
history, that kind of stuff. I'm here for it.
Yeah. What do you guys have sponsors?
Yeah, we were lucky. We started right out of the gate with some fun sponsorship that was like national podcast kind of fodder, right? Like we did Blue
Sure.
Chew for a little while, things like that.
Okay.
And then
We'll
we've
bleep
also
that out if they're not paying you anymore.
oh, I mean, define pay.
Off camera are stacks and stacks of
Yeah.
boxes.
I pivot. Yeah, I just turned my webcam over a little bit. It's just all filled with Blue Chews. It's like it's you know how Scrooge McDuck dives into a big vault of money, a big pool of it. It's that, but it's Blue Chews. It's dangerous. I'm gonna die. No, yeah. So we had that kind of sponsorship, but we've been really lucky with more local sponsorship. We've been talking to Narragansett Beer. I probably shouldn't say this, but because it's behind the scenes. But
Okay.
just between us, this is a secret, okay?
Sure.
Listener, viewer, this is a secret.
They probably can't buy Narragansett beer wherever they live, but when they travel to Rhode Island,
Hey, it's a growing beer that's out there. I've seen it in many a place. I'm like, whoa, Narragansett. But yeah, so they're talking about sponsoring. I had my coffee sponsorship when I was doing Ray Harrington Must content. It's good stuff, but I think we pride ourselves on trying to be as organic as possible, being sincere. It feels weird, especially as a comedian, to just sort of be like, here's a personal story. Let me tell you about this thing going on in my life. And now, hey, you want a mattress that comes in a box?
yeah.
Yeah.
How important do you think the video is to podcasting these days?
I think that video is the perception of video is vital, right? I think that if you have a podcast now, it's almost a prerequisite to have video. But I do think that the majority of people that imbibe podcasts on a regular basis are listeners and not viewers. It's really strange. It is really strange. I think there's been a new kind of marketplace because YouTube became a place where you could discover people. YouTube is a platform where you can find new things. Your podcast app that you use to download podcasts, you're not flipping through the channels of that. You're not looking at things that way. So because people rely on YouTube, they end up having to make a video podcast. It's a weird thing of like the platform is molding the content. I hate everything I'm saying, by the way. I sound like this is a marketing seminar, but I don't know. I have a very
You
pessimistic
haven't
view
said
on this.
algorithm yet, and I'm losing at bingo right now.
If I
It's
say it 3
disappointing.
times, the screen's going to get all weird and things will happen, and then you're going to get stuff from Amazon that you've only been thinking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk about anything else that we might not know about behind the scenes podcast. Oh, let's talk about your
in the
live
podcast.
shows.
Okay, I was ready to get into like my emotions about my father. I wasn't sure what you wanted there.
How about when did you do your first live show, and what is that like?
Oh yeah. No, that's been a really fun thing. I loved doing Ray Harrington Must content, but that wasn't a live podcast experience kind of podcast. It wouldn't be fun that way. I had a podcast previous to that with another comic, Derek Furtado, where it was kind of in that element where we were playful and jokey. But now with Funbearable and with Chuck and Brad, there's so much stuff that we do on the podcast that is performative, right? To a degree, whether it's like a segment kind of thing or a pre-written thing. We like to really kind of push each other into terrible corners, where we'll write scripts for each other kind of stuff. and it's a lot of fun. So the live podcast just felt like a very natural progression of what we were doing. And so with the live shows, we'll do um, uh, the last live show we did. We had to write a script. Each of us one act of this script for Halloween. It was our Halloween live show, and it was packed, and it was super fun. But it was weird because Brad wrote the first act and only gave me the connective tissue, and then I wrote the second act, and it was about us, and then Chuck wrote the third. And really, what it is just an excuse to write mean jokes about each other and make us read them. You know what I mean? Like that's the best part. So that was a lot of fun, and there's some prank stuff that we've done. Like I said earlier, Brad loving hot dogs. Chuck and I, Brad is from Indiana, so Chuck and I created a postcard of Brad in a full hot dog kind of apron and hat and everything in front of a cart that said Brad's Brats. And we sent those postcards to so many people across the country and to businesses, saying that Brad was going to start his hot dog cart. And and it just like sending it to the local strip club and saying, I'm going to be in your parking lot selling hot dogs, let's team up, right? Like stuff like that. You'll have to come talk to me in the parking lot because I know I'm not allowed inside anymore. A lot of that kind of stuff. So that was a really fun reveal to do on our that was the 100th episode live show that we did. And like it's just fun stuff like that. So it really felt natural to move it to the live audience. I
Yeah.
love it because I'm a stand-up, so it feels I'm at home there, and I think the two of them are a little less comfortable, but I
You
think
got
we
home
make
field
some really fun
advantage
stuff.
over them.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. What's the audience composition like at those things? Is it fans and regular listeners, or is it just people who wanted something interesting to do and then become listeners?
Yeah, I think it's a good mix. We always Chuck is really good at always asking up front, like who here, listens to Funbearable and who here has no idea what this is about to be. Um, and I do think it's a good mix. I think majoritively it's listeners, and then we do get, especially if we do it at the Comedy Connection, we will get some people that are just they want to see a show.
Yeah.
And it's been really fun to have that happen and then have people be regular listeners. I'm just now getting used to the idea of people actively listening and being fans. It's just sinking in. Like this weekend, I was doing a run of shows in upstate New York, and Saturday night I was in the Catskills, and it was like Little Ireland. It's a town where all these Irish people went, and now it's just we're Ireland now. So I was doing this show, and it was a really fun show. And like 3 or 4 people came up and they were like, "Hey, I'm a fun bear. I listen." And I was like, "Oh wow, this is great." Even
Great
out
name.
here in the Catskills, they get podcasts. They do get them. They get.
Yeah.
I think
Woods are
they're a
good
month
places
behind.
for fun bears.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Harder in the city.
Yeah, that's a different bear.
Yes. On the West Coast, usually.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a great question from the audience.
Yeah.
Let's fire that up. Ray, do you feel like you need to stick to a formula or have structure? If so, is it more for yourself or the listeners? Great question, Mark in North Carolina.
I think I might be a bad influence to this idea, right? So I'm going to say something that I don't really adhere to for myself. I do think having structure is helpful. Funbearable is a notoriously unstructured show. We are, part of our thing is like having, the episodes start and we haven't opened the episode, opened it, with, "Hey, welcome to Funbearable." And we just kind of start talking and something will happen and we hit a nice point and then we open the show. We're very rarely on the rails. But it works and it's really fun. And I think part of the magic is just us keeping the ball up, you know what I mean? But I do think structure is super helpful. I think anybody who is making a podcast having structure is so important, because if you run out of steam, or you know, go off on too many tangents and you don't know where you are anymore, if you have that structure, it allows you to go back to it. Basically,
Ray, I
having
have to
that
interrupt
structure.
you. We're at the
Yeah.
20-minute mark, and
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry.
time to ask if you're wearing pants. This is a reveal we do every single episode. Is the guest wearing pants? And I will stand up in a second and show you that I'm not
Okay.
wearing pants. So
Uh,
is that the kind of structure you would encourage?
I guess so. Maybe less of like that felt like you pulled a gun. That I am wearing pants,
Okay.
but they're
Amazing.
sweatpants.
A new
So
recurring
basically,
segment, everybody.
yeah. No, I no, long story short, I'm rambling. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Long story short, I think that structure is important, because you have to have the rails to fall off of. And as
Mhm.
long as you have that box that you can fit in, then you can break out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like starting in stand-up. You have to know what the rules are before you break them. And I think that's where structure applies in podcasts.
Nice. Great question, North
Whew,
Carolina.
thank you.
Let's move away from podcasts. We have like less than 10 minutes. So many things we could talk about. You
Okay.
have a
You
movie
can
that,
rapid fire it. That's another segment you can do, is just like
that is true. Rapid
immediate
fire.
questions. Yeah.
What color are the pants? How long are the pants? Do they cover your knees?
They are black. They are 32 inches long in the leg. It does.
Ray is notoriously tall, majoritively tall, if you will.
Pejoratively tall
yes.
as well. People do insult me because of it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm 6'7".
6'7". Wow. Incredible. Incredible that my car is still driving after 6'7" Ray Harrington. We drove him all around Colorado.
Yeah.
We're at 331,000 miles.
Oh my
Everybody
God. That's amazing.
Tracking old Subi. So many things we could talk about. We could talk about the movie you produced, directed, acted in that got onto Hulu. We could ask you how to get on late night television, because you did that successfully. We could talk to you about doing cruise ship comedy, because you've done that successfully. But instead, I'd like to ask you for your favorite marinara recipe.
I don't have one. I don't have a marinara recipe. Oh no. Oh, I
prefer my marinara from convicted felons, such as Mayor Cianci, was it?
Buddy Cianci?
Buddy
Yeah,
Cianci,
you got
yes.
me. You got me with that. Now listen, I live in Rhode Island. I am not from Rhode Island.
Oh,
so
okay.
the Buddy Cianci stuff, I'm originally from Maine, so I feel a kinship to Maine. We have our own, terrible people.
You blend the lobsters into your marinara.
Exactly.
Shells
Stephen King makes a marinara. Mwah. It's so good.
The secret ingredient is misery.
Yeah, and children's nightmares.
Yes. Let's see. Let's talk about cruise ship stuff. Let's talk about that. What's the assuming that you can't answer this, and there's a cruise line you don't work with anymore that you don't need to name necessarily. We'll do that in the segment off the air on the bonus portion. Worst cruise ship experience?
Oh man, I think it's day to day. Honestly, I think the worst cruise ship experience. That's really hard, because there's stuff that's like the obvious thing of like, oh, that crowd was really difficult, or I think one of the weird things that I never thought of getting into this, I fought getting into cruise ships. I tend to fight success. I fought getting into cruise ships.
Is there money in this? I'm not interested.
Yeah, I don't like that. I like to think of it as art. What's that? I have bills?
Amy and chicken fingers.
If only I could build a house on them. I fought it for a while. I got into it. There are elements of it that I do like. I like being able to go and see these places as much as possible. It has given me a sense that I didn't have before of stand-up as well. It's not real stand-up. It's part stand-up, part you are on a cruise ship, right? The thing I didn't expect was the kids. So many people bring their children to these shows, and okay, fine, but to a degree where it's like, there's 7-year-olds sitting in this audience, or there's a child in this audience, and that really throws me, because you have to be clean, but also I'm talking about my life experience, which is where I am. I have a 10-year-old. I complain about my kid a little bit, not about him, but about responsibilities of parenting. And it feels weird to do that when there's a kid there. And then sometimes I remember once there was I think it was an Alaska run, and this dad brought his two kids that were like 7 and 9 into the room 5 minutes, 10 minutes into the show, sat them in the front row, and then left. He just left like, oh, I'll just stick the kid like I'm a babysitter. And one of the kids tried to come up on the stage.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm trying to make it fun and playful, but at a point, as soon as he started to get to the stage, my dad voice kicked in, like, "Hey, buddy, we don't do that." You know what I mean? It was bizarre because you can't go at them. That's insane. What am I gonna? Yeah, I'm gonna put this guy in his place. This 7-year-old child. That's insane. Yeah, so they're interesting.
This is super random, but something about your story reminded me of the run we did and how I had just visited with the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile in Colorado. And last night in Lincoln, Nebraska, 1 block away from the venue I performed in, there was the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And what a good luck charm.
Amazing.
I think I'm going to tour just around their schedule. Like if I could figure out where they're going to be, I should just do shows.
Are you kidding me? I want to team up with them to a degree. Like I already said, my co-host on Funbearable, Brad Rohr, is a hot dog fiend.
Yeah.
If we could set up
he might have been there. Maybe he was driving it.
It might have been him in disguise. That could have. He paints
He's
his body like an Oscar Mayer.
He goes between an enormous car and a human.
Yeah, exactly. I did a show in Boston after I got back from Alaska. I did a show in Boston, and the Wienermobile was there. It was at the show. It was a don't tell show outside. We were on a pier, and the hot dog's there, and I was like, "This is insane."
Wild.
Yeah.
Wild. We got another question, and we're running out of time, so let's throw it up. Being in international waters is basically like the Late Late Show. If it's Carnival, anything goes. Do you do the same sets? Question. Do you get feedback from the cruise ship director, or are you left alone?
I'm going to say, to keep it brief, you are alarmingly left alone. You're left to your own devices when you get on the ship, how you get in your room, if your room's ready, all those things. You're just you decide. You're your own boss. Isn't that great? And then when there are moments on a cruise ship, truly, where I have been backstage about to go on stage, and I'm in like the Mediterranean somewhere, and I'm like, no one here knows what I say. No one here knows what I'm about to do. It's weird that this company has allowed me the even remote possibility of ruining, 1,000 people in this theater's vacation that they've waited years to go on is crazy. Having a bad night in a club or a one-nighter or something like that, I'll feel horrible for a while. I would feel so bad, and also kind of mad at the people anyway. So you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It's their fault for sure.
Yeah, and to be clear, I have to say this, otherwise my own inner comedian wouldn't allow myself to live anymore. I only do cruise ships very sparingly. I try and keep it minimal. I have friends that do it a ton, and I can see there's a little less glimmer in their eye.
Yeah.
When I see them.
Yeah, I also should say, when you came out and did a run in Colorado, we had people come out to shows that had seen you on a cruise ship and were just ecstatic for the opportunity to see you without seasickness.
Right. Yeah.
They were so happy.
Yeah, and the best part about that is after that show, like I got in the car with you and we left. You know what I mean? Like I love hanging out with people after a show at the venue and like talking to people and having a good time. And now after doing cruise ships, the absolute pleasure of leaving the place is amazing. It really is. And I mean that in the nicest way, right?
Yeah.
I thank you.
Yes. Okay, we're out of time. Ray Harrington from the Funbearable podcast. You've seen him on Conan. He's on cruise ships. He's in international waters. He has a movie. Can you find that movie anywhere right now?
We are moving to another distributor. We're going to put it out through Stand Up Records, so it will be back up. It was on Hulu as an exclusive, and now it's going to be back up on like iTunes,
And,
Amazon, all those places. It's
and
called
can
Be
you
a
shout
Man.
out the name, etc.?
Be a Man. It is a documentary. I did not have a dad growing up, and then when I found out I was going to be the father to a small boy, I freaked out, and so I set out to do all the masculine things I thought I needed to know, like fighting, drinking, cars, all that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. And how can people track you down online?
I don't think there's a. I'm not on any registries or anything. If that's what you're asking. No. RayHarringtonComedy.com is my website. That's like the the landing page for everything, and you can find me on all those things. And hit me up on social media. We'll talk.
Okay, amazing. That's been Ray Harrington, everybody. We'll be back next Monday night. We got to thank you from the internets. We're going to end this.